right, welcome everybody. We are learning tonight Leilul Nishmat Miriam Bat Bracha. We're going to learn that we're going to start tonight the hidden story of Ruth, a story that I would like to say most people are not so familiar with. A story that has tremendous amount of lessons into it. It's actually a story that you think that has a lot more depth than you actually could imagine. And we're going to try to get a few answers onto the whole Ruth. Number one is, why do we read it on Shavuot? Everybody wonder, like, what does it have to do with Shavuot? Shavuot, we got the Torah. What does that have to do with Ruth and now this Moabite convert? Number two, we're going to speak about, you know who actually wrote Ruth? It was not Ruth and it was not David. It was written by Shmuel HaNavi. And it was written years after the whole story of Ruth happened. So why was it written? That's what we're also B'ezrat Hashem speak about. Anyways, we'll begin. Before we begin, we have to give a little bit of what happened beforehand to understand a little bit about the story of Ruth. Ruth comes from a place called Moabite. Moab in English is a nation that's not so liked by the Jewish people, and the reason for that is that Moab and Ammon come from Lot. So we have to backtrack all the way back to Abraham and Lot. Lot went and he lived in Sodom, a very, very immoral place, a very bad place. And what happened is that the entire place was destined to be destroyed, except God was going to spare Lot and his family. So they were able to get out. The people that were able to get out was Lot and his two daughters. His wife ended up were dying on the way because she looked when she wasn't supposed to. And Lot and his two daughters escaped. They escaped and ran to a cave. In their mind, they saw the entire world got destroyed. They didn't realize it was just their actual city and an area. So they decided, out of their real true goodness, is that they have to repopulate the world. But how are they going to repopulate the world if there's only them and their father? So they did something that's a very despicable act. That is, they got their father drunk and they conceived with their father. Each one had a baby that night. One was Ammon and one was Moab. The only reason why Lot, though, was saved and he was able to escape was only in merit to Abraham. Now, many years afterwards, the Jews when they left Egypt, they wanted to pass by the land of Moab, and they needed assistance. They needed some water, some food, and Moab said, "No, we're not giving you anything." Not only that, they even went and they tried to curse the Jews. They hired Bilam to try to curse the Jews, so they went against us. Now, this is a serious act of ungratefulness. And we know in Judaism, one of the most important things is being grateful. That's why one of the main things that we're doing is we're being grateful to God. You have to be grateful to your parents. Kibbud avim. There's many mitzvot that involve around the fact of hakarat hatov, of gratefulness. So they were not being grateful, because if not for our ancestor, Avraham, then their ancestors, Lot, which is Ammon and Moab, would never come into existence, because they were only saved only because of Abraham. So now we saved you, our ancestors you, and now when we come to help, you're not going to help us? And they refuse to help us, and because of that, there is a law that you're not allowed to nobody can convert from Moab. You can't marry. The actual law is you cannot marry into the nation of Moab. However, there was some confusion on this law. Does this law only refer to men who convert, or also to women who convert? The actual halacha is only men who convert are not allowed to. You don't intermarry with them. Now, why men and not women? Because the actual obligation to give bread and water when the Jews came into the desert in the time of when they left Egypt was the obligation incumbent upon the men, not the women. The women are supposed to be modest, supposed to be home. So the only people who failed, who are ungrateful, were the men. Because of that, God is very midah k'neged midah, measure for measure. Because of that, fine, you're not getting into the Jewish nation. So Ruth, she comes from Moab, but it was at this point in time, it was very questionable. Like, they weren't sure about the halakha. Is it that she is allowed to marry, or is she not allowed to marry? That is one of the reasons that Shmuel HaNavi wrote the book of Ruth, to show the legitimate, because who comes from Ruth? Who comes from Ruth was David HaMelech. So Shmuel HaNavi wrote the book of Ruth to prove the legitimacy of David and his kingship. So that is the background of Moab. Now to understand a little bit about the time that they were living in. So we know when the Jews left Egypt, who was leading them? Moshe Rabbeinu. After the Jews left Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu was leading them. He ruled as sort of a uncrowned king. He ruled as a very, he was never considered the king, but he ruled as an uncrowned king. Yehoshua also ruled like an uncrowned king. Now, after Yehoshua, after he passed away, there was a period called the period of the judges. The judges are the ones that ruled the Jewish nation. Now, they didn't rule the Jewish nation as a ruler rules. Rather, it was sort of like everybody do your own thing, and we trust you're going to do the right thing. And they were there for guidance, and it wasn't under a strict rule. And this period lasted for over 350 years. So it was a very, very big span of period of the time of the judges. The problem with that is when you live and let live, it doesn't always work so well. Sometimes the Jews were a really high level, and that is really the best. Like, you don't need somebody to tell you what to do. You don't need someone to enforce the rules. They know what to do, and you deal with it. But at other points in time, the Jews are in low point. There was corruptions, there's stealing, there's idol worship. And during this time was when the story of Ruth took place. So I'll tell you how bad it was. If the judges were also not honored. In fact, the way that Ruth starts is with the judges were judged. What does it mean the judges were judged? That every time the judges made a verdict and they wanted to judge somebody, the person that was getting judged was like, oh, are you so better than me? And in fact, the Midrash tells us, like, for example, if a judge would say, like, how could you do that? You're selling silver, but you mixed metal into the silver, so you're sort of fraud. It's fraud. So they answered back, says, oh, is it any better than you? Says, you take one and you dilute it with water. So it's like the judges were not that good and the people were not that good, then you can't expect too much good to be happening. Now, these judges that were more corrupt were usually the lower class judges. The high judges, they were obviously, it's talking about a time of prophecy. This is talking about a time right after Yetziat Mitzrayim. So the Jews were on a very high level, but at the same point in time, the Jews are also on a very low level. The mediocre judges were on that level. The high judges, everyone respected. So the Jews were at this point in time when things are not going well, you could obviously expect divine retribution. God is going to somehow come in and wake you up. The rule is like this. The rule is always like this. If you're not following the laws, it's only a matter of a certain time that God's going to send you a reminder to be like, hey, here's the laws. And this very simple and very obvious example is Germany Holocaust. In Germany, we wanted to be German. And the Germans had to remind us, no, you're not German, you're Jewish. And they remind us, unfortunately, in a very, very harsh manner. So the reminder that God sent during that time was a reminder of famine. It was a time where the famine was extremely bad. And in fact, the famine was so bad that it says that it's noted as this is one of the 10 worst famines in history. And I'll list you the 10s. The 10 famines of the worst ones was during the time of Adam. You have Lemech, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the judges, which is now, and David, Eliyahu, Elisha, and the last one is the time of Mashiach. Now the time of Mashiach is not going to be a famine of food and hunger like the other ones, but rather it's going to be a famine for thirst of Torah. There's going to be a time where everybody's going to want to learn Torah. They're going to keep on drinking for more and more and more. And granted, we could see that we're ready in that day. You have people coming back with zero access to Judaism beforehand, zero even interest in Judaism beforehand, and somehow they're interested. Pretty much to say this is how this organization sort of started. So you see it, and things are just moving it. So this is all right before the time of Mashiach. So during this time there was a very, very wealthy person. His name was Elimelech. And he was actually a very righteous person also. He comes from the land, from the tribe of Yehuda. And that's why he lived in Bethlehem. Bethlehem, back then everybody lived wherever the Shvatim, in the separate sections where you live, that's where you are, that's where you live. So he lived in Bethlehem, which was the tribe of the section of the tribe of Yehuda. Now, he was the son of Nachshon ben Amminadab. Just to put a thing about it, if you guys don't remember, when we spoke about the story of Pesach, the Nachshon ben Amminadab was the first guy to jump into the sea before it split. So here's a little bit of a timeline on not a timeline, it's sort of family tree. So you have Amminadab and Nachshon. Nachshon is the guy with the crossing of the sea, and Nachshon had four sons. We know Elimelech was one of them, Solomon and Tov, and Naomi's father, which we don't know the name. The Elimelech, which is the guy that we're talking about over here, the guy who was very wealthy, very distinguished, righteous guy. He lived in Bethlehem. He married his niece, which was his brother's daughter. He married, and that's Naomi. They had two kids, Machlon and Kilion. They had these are the two kids that are that are in the story right now. So now. He was actually a leader of the Jewish people at that time. And the famine came, and instead of being a leader and doing what he should have done, which the Torah says that he should have stayed over there, and he should have rebuked them, and he should have put them on the right path, realize what's the whole point. We know the Gemara says, if somebody sees that bad things are happening to him, he has to look inside and see what happened. Why is God doing this to me? There's a reason for it. There's a reason for everything that happens. So what Elimelech should have done is gave rebuke. But instead, he picked up his stuff and he booked. He booked Israel. And it says, the Midrashim say that there's an opinion that the famine was only in Israel. To show you how serious, like sometimes you get a sign and you be like, I can't make it any more clear. But people are still, like they don't get it, and they just keep on, whatever, like right over their head. So the Boaz decided that he is not going to. Elimelech. Elimelech decided he's not staying around over here. Now, why didn't he want to stay? He wanted to say one of the reasons the Midrashim bring down is because he had a lot of money, and if it's a famine, people are going to come to him for money, and he's going to give because he's a righteous guy, and he's going to lose a lot of money. So he decided he's going to leave Eretz Yisrael, and where he's going to go, which was the biggest kicker, he's going to go to Moab. A nation that is despicable to us, despicable in a manner that they're of their actions. So why did he want to go to Moab? He wanted to go to Moab, to this land, because this land was known to be very stingy. And he says, perfect, this matches exactly what I need. So he decides that he's going to go to Moab. And he packs up all his stuff, and he makes his way out. Now, when he makes his way out, people see him packing his stuff. They realize this is not like a pleasure trip that he's leaving. He's like literally packing out. And the entire nation, the Jewish nation, saw the leader living. It really makes a effect in you. When you have, I'll give you an example like this. Someone's at war. You're at war with your, in your group, and you have a general. Imagine that you guys are fighting, and all of a sudden the general is like, is giving orders, and then suddenly he sees something and he books. The general runs. You'd be like, the people are like, what are we supposed to do now? Should we fight? Should we run? They're all like confused. So when you have a leader like Elimelech, all of a sudden book when things are going rough, it hurts the people, and it actually took a toll on them. He was there, even if he didn't want to give them the money, he could have at least, given them emotional support, guide them to the right way. And in fact, the Midrashim says that one of the reasons that we're going to see why he got punished was because he didn't even pray for them. He should have prayed for them. We know. And the Zohar brings down that, by the time of the Mabul, Noach, it says it's called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach. Now, why are you assigning the waters of Noach that title? It's a very, like the world was destroyed, waters of Noach. That's very derogatory. Why is it considered his waters? And the Zohar explains because he didn't pray for the nation. He should have prayed for the nation, and because he didn't pray for the nation was destroyed, and hence he has a little part in that because he didn't pray for them. So same thing also. Elimelech didn't go and he didn't pray for the Jewish nation. He just got up and left. Now, granted, when he went to Moab, he didn't intend on staying there a long time. And in fact, if you look at the Megillah, look at the Ruth, you look at inside. It's the first words that when he says that he went to Moab, it says Vayigar. And he dwelled, sort of like, a ger. Ger is like a convert, a sort of like, a stranger. Ger is more like a stranger. So Elimelech, he didn't really intend to stay there. He was instrumented to be a stranger, and then, come back to Eretz Yisrael. But if you go a little bit further, you'll see that Vayagar went and turned into Vayihu Sham. And they were there, and they became settled there. And in fact, right when he moved in there, he didn't move into the main city. He didn't go full of idol worship. He's like, no, he's a big tzaddik. He's not going to go there. He went first into the fields, into the suburbs, into the area where it's not so heavily populated in the main centers. But after a while, you get into, once you get a bad character trait, once you get stingy, it's hard to get out of it. This is a very important rule to learn, that once, if there's certain people that are more inclined to go into either laziness or, immorality, whatever it is, the more that you go into it, the more that you dig yourself into it, and the harder it is to get out. So he was there, intended only to be 3 months, but then he got so sucked in that he ended up staying in there. And so while he was there, the Midrashim, the Megillah says that God started sending him signs. This is not a place for you. You got a book. And one of the signs was that his animals started dying. He was very wealthy, and he started losing a lot of his wealth. And unfortunately, he didn't pick up on this, on these signs. And even though the Midrashim say that even though while he was there, he was still religious. It's not like he threw away Judaism. He was still very religious. Learning Torah, very, very religious. But God sent him some signs, didn't pick it up. And after a short period of time, he passed away. There actually is a very interesting midrash that says that how he passed away? He passed away from hunger. Somehow there was some sort of famine that he passed away from hunger. So you think about it, he ran away from hunger. He ended up passing away because of hunger. So after that he passed away, so his wife Naomi decided, listen, what do we have to do in this foreign land? This is not our land. Our land is Israel. Let's go back to Israel. But her children sort of got comfortable in the area. You have to think about it this way. They are coming from royalty. Israel royalty is coming into Moab area. So they made a big splash when they got over there. And in fact, they were going to be offered high position in the government. They were offered very prestigious areas, and they were like, listen, why should we leave? They tell their mother. It says, it's good for us over here. It's very nice for us over here. So the children started to convince their mother, that we really want to stay. Naomi really wanted to leave, and because she went through so much. Imagine she left Israel, she got into this foreign land, and her beloved husband died. To make matters even worse, she was actually pregnant when her husband passed away, and because of all the things, she also lost her baby. She had a miscarriage. So with all that, she just wanted to get up and go back home. But the boy said, no. Machlon and Kilyon, they wanted to stay over here. Not only that, and they threw her another, wild blow. They said, listen, we hear that the daughters of the king of Moab, they have sort of a interest towards us for marriage. So the mother says, are you serious? You're actually contemplating marrying this Moab, this non-Jewish, she couldn't, what does that even mean? Says your father would never agree to such a shidduch. So they said, listen, mother, you got to be with the times. It's more modern now. We're going to take care of you. Don't worry about it. And back and forth. The Naomi tried to get them back. The boy says, we're staying over here. So Naomi didn't have anything, couldn't say anything else. She said, listen, if my kids are going to stay here, what am I going to go back for? There's a famine in the land over here. So she was forced to stay also in the land of Moab. A short while after that, Kilyon, which was the younger brother, actually went and married Orpah, which is one of the daughters of the king. So she was a princess of the king of Moab. And Orpah was one of the reasons why already you shouldn't have married her is because she was known as a witch. Not a witch as like an evil, right now people call, I'm talking about like a sorcerer. She actually practiced magic. So, but Kilyon was very, what's the word that I'm looking for? He was a very ambitious man. And he saw her as a way to get a lot of, far in life, and financially and power-wise. So he decided he's going to go and marry her. The older brother, Machlon, after that, he marries the other sister, which was Ruth. Ruth was the princess of Moab, and she's actually the star of this show. So the question now is asked, and it's very interesting because you think about it. So did they convert? Did they marry non-Jews? What's going on over here? So there's the Midrashim. There's very interesting stuff in the Midrashim. The general opinion is, and the majority of the Midrashim say that they didn't convert. They actually married non-Jews. They actually went and married a non-Jew. Not only they married a non-Jew, they married a non-Jew from Moab. There is an opinion, and the Zohar brings us down, that they did convert, but the conversion wasn't a true conversion. They did it out of fear, and it wasn't a real conversion. So regardless, it still was not a good conversion. I'll give you an example. You convert from to Reform or Conservative. That's what it means. A big fat zero. Right? You could take that paper and you could use it for something more than other things. The truth is, it might be able to actually help you a little bit in Israel, but from the halachic sense, it means nothing. I'll give you just a good example. The guy who's going to convert you is what? It could be a gay guy, a gay rabbi, gay Rabbi Ellen, right? He's going over there from the Reform Temple, Beth Kel, synagogue of, Coney Island, and they're going to go over here and they're going to convert you. Part of the things of conversion is like, you have to accept all the 613 mitzvot. The guy who's converting you doesn't accept the 613 mitzvot. He's going to make somebody else accept the 613 mitzvot. So, granted, the conversion, of Ruth and Orpah, if there even was a conversion, wasn't a good conversion. And furthermore, there's another Mepharshim says that they didn't have a bet din over there. In order to convert, you need a bet din. You need a bet din of 3 people to go and convert you. They didn't have anything. In fact, there's a Midrash that says that the only people, the whole Israel was in a famine. You know how many people left? Just Boaz and Naomi and their 2 kids. Everybody else stayed in Eretz Yisrael. They're the only ones left. So granted, so now there's no Jews, only them, they're over there. There's no bet din. So the opinion that we're going for and moving forward is that they actually didn't convert at this point in time. So they married these non-Jewish Moabite women. 10 years. 10 years God had mercy on them. One of the reasons that God waited extra longer over here because it wasn't their opinion and decision to move to Moab. They sort of went with their father. Their father went over there, so it went on. So because it wasn't their decision, God gave them more time. 10 years. 10 years he waited for them. And he said them the same signs. In fact, one extra sign he said them is that they didn't have any kids. They didn't have any kids, so already to try to, wake you up. But that didn't work, so they started also, all the animals started dying, and the same plague, and things happened. And eventually, I'll tell you a little bit actually, very quickly about their names. Machlon, his name was not always Machlon. He was before then. He was known as Yoash. Yoash is a little bit Hebrew, you have to know. It comes from the word Yeush, which is to give up, the desperation. He sort of gave up on the Geulah. He gave up on the fact that the hunger, the famine is going to go off. He went and he became Machlon. Machlon from the word of Chilul. He desecrated. What did he desecrate? He desecrated by leaving Eretz Yisrael and marrying a Moabite woman. The Kilion, which was the younger brother, he was known as Saraf. As he burnt, which is in Hebrew, saraf is lisrof, is to burn. He burnt the laws of Torah. He became Kilion, which is another, very close to Kaleh, which is to eradicate, erase from memory. And we see they both went and they eradicated, they were erased from memory. It's interesting because Kilion was completely eradicated from memory, but Machlon, he wasn't, because his wife, which was Ruth, ended up marrying and after a Jew, and sort of we'll speak about it afterwards how they sort of continued his name. But in any case, they didn't wake up, they didn't get the lessons, and God sent them lesson after lesson after lesson. Didn't happen, and they both died also in the similar type of plague. And they both, to make this matters even worse, they both died on the same day. Imagine what now Naomi, their mother, their righteous mother, had to go through. So Naomi went and she mourned over her two sons. She literally lost everything. She came into this land, a rich, prestige, honor woman with a family, a tzaddik as a husband, two potential big tzaddikim as children. Really they had unlimited potential. And at this point, after 10 years of being there, she lost everything. Money, wealth, all gone. Husband, children, everything gone. Prestige gone. Honor gone. She came full and she left empty. And so she decided after the Shiva, after the 7 days of mourning, that her two sons died. She decided, listen, what am I going to stay over here? It's like, I'm going to stay in Moab. What is this? This place just, was a curse after a curse after a curse. I don't need to be over here. And she decided that it's time for her to return to Eretz Yisrael. So now what she was thinking about it, she's like, what am I going to go to Eretz Yisrael? She says, I left the entire nation when I had the ability to, now it's a famine over there. At this point, they didn't have, New York Times to be like, oh yeah, Eretz Yisrael, the famine's over, come back in. It wasn't like, from all she knew, that the famine was still in existence. Famine was still continuing. So she didn't have any money, so she's now going to have to go back to Israel as a poor, destitute woman and go and start collecting from people that she refused and she left to give them. She's like, how should I do that? So while she was contemplating this, she noticed that there were peddlers. Peddlers were like, merchants. They were coming from town to town, and they were selling, diamonds, jewelry. And she looks at them and she realizes these merchants, they are not from Moab. These are not Moabite people. And she looks a little bit closer and she realizes they're Jews. They're Jews in Moab. So she goes over to them and she's like, you guys from Mount Yisrael? You guys Jewish? They're like, yeah. So she said, please tell me, is there a famine anymore? They're like, no, Baruch Hashem, God already remembered us and He took rid of the famine. There's food there, Baruch Hashem, everything is okay. So she, first of all, is extremely happy. She says, okay, now for sure I should go back. And she's like, okay, great, thank you very much. And as she's walking away, she's like, wait a minute. She's like, how can I left when there was a famine. And now all of a sudden, when God remembers them, I'm going to sort of come back. You jump off by the winning teams. You'd be like, I'm this fan. And then when this team wins, I'm a this fan. And then you go, keep it. She's like, come on, that's not right. How am I supposed to, they did tshuva. And that's why God remembered them. And that's why God went and God, got rid of the famine. So while she was thinking of this, then she started realizing, she says, wait a minute. She says, why is there peddlers in Moab? Moab is a nearby Eretz Yisrael, right? It's about 42 miles from where she lived to where Moab. Why are there peddlers? If God really got rid of the famine completely, then God could have sustained the entire Jewish nation from within. Why do we have to go and branch out and outsource and go out to do business outside? They could have done everything within. Must be, said Naomi, that the reason that the Jews were saved and the famine was ended was not only because of the merit of the Jewish people, because if it would have been only solely because of the merit of the Jewish people, God would have taken care of everything, and everybody would have stayed there. Granted, it must have been a combination of besides the tshuva, it must have been also the chesed, the mercy that God had on the Jewish people. They decided, listen, I'm going to bring you, even though you don't fully deserve it, I'm going to end the famine, but you still now have to go and do business outside, because that shows that I don't, you didn't fully do it. So now she's thinking, she says, okay, I didn't feel comfortable to go there when it was, I'm sort of banking off the other people's tshuva. But now that it's all because of God's mercy, then I could also take from God's mercy. So she decided, she made up her mind, she's going to Eretz Yisrael. Now she had one problem. She had two daughter-in-laws. Ex-daughter-in-laws, whatever you want to call them, but they're still daughter-in-laws and they lived with her. And they're not going to want to go to Eretz Yisrael. They're princess from Moab. Why would they want to do an Eretz Yisrael? So So she has to try to figure out a way. How am I going to get to Eretz Yisrael? How is this going to work out? So she's thinking about all possible ways, and she's like, listen, if I tell them, they're going to convince me to stay. If I, try to, it's not going to work. The only way is to sneak out. Go in the middle of the night while no one's looking and try to sneak out of Moab. So she makes up her mind, and that's how she's going to continue with the plan. So Ruth, Orpah, they're all still live in the same house or the same area. And early in the middle of before the morning started happening, Naomi woke up. She didn't have much to pack. Thank you. She didn't have much to pack, and she sneaks out of the house and starts walking. It says how poor Naomi is that she didn't even have shoes. She only had an old pair of ripped socks, and that's how she had to. And it's now she has to travel as a walk. Thank you very much. She had to walk back to Eretz Yisrael. So. She wakes up early in the morning, and she makes her way out. Somehow, maybe she made a little bit too much noise, but Orpah woke up. She woke up, and she wakes up and she sees Naomi from the window, like walking off in the distance. So she wakes up Ruth next to her and she'd be like, check it out. Is that our mother-in-law? What is she doing? Waking up so early in the morning. So Ruth looks and she's like, yeah, that is our, that is Naomi. I wonder what she's doing. So Orpah said, listen, maybe she wants to get some fresh air. Let's let her walk. So Ruth says, no, it's not nice. She's an elder woman. She says, we're her daughter-in-laws. Let's walk together with her. So, they were going back and forth. Orpah said, listen, just wants her peace and quiet. And Ruth said, listen, I'm going with her. Says, you want to come, you come. If not, you could stay over here. She's like, oh, fine, I'll come. Yeah. So Orpah and Ruth, they get up and they run after Naomi. When they're a few paces behind Naomi, suddenly, they start yelling, good morning. And Naomi jumped because she, you sneak out of the house, you think you're the mastermind, you're nobody, when people try to, pretend to be somebody who you're not, and everyone thinks. I'll give you an example. You have, somebody who goes to the theater, right? So he wears a baseball cap, he puts his payas over here, he puts, hides everything, and be like, come on, everybody knows you're Jewish. Take off your kippah, take off your tzitzit. You go from a mile away, I guarantee you, an Arab could tell you you're a Jew. Christian could also tell you, who are you fooling? So, Naomi tried to sneak out. I guess she, couldn't get out quiet enough. And she went and all of a sudden she jumps out and she sees, her two daughter-in-laws are over there. So they were like, hey, mother-in-law, what's going on? Where are you off to? And she, caught off guard. She's like, oh, I'm just taking a stroll. So they were like, cool, we'll join you. And Naomi's like, all right, sounds good. And they're all three of them are now walking together towards the outskirts of town. So. No, as they're walking, they walk actually for quite a while, and then they get to a fork. One of the thing leads back into town, and the other they could either it's like three ways, right? They have one way that could go back to town the other way, or they could have a way that goes to the, I guess if you want to call it the main highway or whatever it was between the cities. So. They stop over there, and Naomi says to them, he says, listen, you guys can head back now. I'm just gonna, I appreciate the walk, the company, but I'm gonna go a little bit further. And they said, Orpah says, no, it's okay. Well, we'll come with you. It's all cool. And she's like, no, I insist. You guys could go back. It's fine. And they said, no, we insist. We'll come along. So Naomi says, all right. But she takes the way out of town into that. So suddenly Orpah stops her, be like, she says, why are you going this way? This way is out of town. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to walk a little bit further this way. So they stop her. They realize something's going on. She's like, you want to explain to us what's going on? What's going on over here? So Naomi, turns around to them and says, listen, I didn't want to have to tell you this, but I'm leaving. So there's like, where are you going? She's like, I'm going back home. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. So, Ruth says, why don't you tell us? You didn't want to, we're your daughter-in-laws. So Naomi says, listen, I don't want to upset you. You know how it's going to work. You guys would have convinced me to stay, and I really feel like I want to go. So Orpah says, listen, what's the rush? Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Maybe we can work something out. Why do you have to leave? And Naomi says, listen, I've been thinking about this for the past 10 years. I'm out of here. I'm going. So, and she explains to him, listen, says this land, while it's your land, and you girls have been great, and they literally were. They were promised a very, very big dowry, and now that their husbands died, Naomi was destitute. They forgave everything. So you took care of my children's burial, and my husband. You literally were amazing. But there's nothing for me in here more, and I want to go back home. So Orpah says, listen, let's go. We'll move. You need a change of scenery. I get it. We'll go to the country. We'll go a different place. Well, it's like, why do you have to go back to Eretz Yisrael? And Naomi smiled, shook her head. She says, no, I made up my mind. This is where I'm going to go. So Ruth goes, and she's like, you know what? I fully support our mother-in-law. I think she's doing great. She's like, let's go. And Orpah's like, what do you mean, let's go? So she's like, I'm going to go with my mother-in-law. I'm going with Naomi to Eretz Yisrael. And Naomi is listening to this, like, oh my God, what does this do now? And so she's going. And Orpah is like thinking about it. She says, listen, I'm a Moabite princess. Well, am I going to go now to Israel? What is that going to happen? So she's contemplating back and forth. So Ruth's like, listen, you're coming with us or you're going? And she's like, fine, I'll come. So just do me a favor. Orpah tells Ruth, let me go back, grab a few things. Ruth, this is the conversation I had between them. Ruth says, no, don't worry, forget about the things. You're going to go back home, you're going to forget it. You're coming, we're leaving right now. We're not going back for nothing. So Orpah is going back and forth. She finally fine. You know what? I'm coming along with you. They both come to her and be like, all right, we're coming to you to Israel. And now Naomi is, she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? She tries to convince them. She tries to convince them not to come to Israel. And she tells, if you come to Israel, you're going to have to convert. You have to, under conversion. Conversion is not a simple thing. So they go out and they says, they didn't answer. They kept on following her. So they walked even further. So they're already a few miles out from their hometown. And Naomi turns around and she tries one more time. She's like, all right, guys, I appreciate the gesture. You guys came all the way over here. Now it's time for you guys to go home. And Orpah is actually, she's like, what do you think? She says, you think we just did this as a nice gesture? We're accompanying you? No, like we meant it all seriousness. We're coming with you. We're coming with you to Israel. So she says, she goes over and says, why? Why do you got to come? What do you think is waiting for you over there? She's like, I'm a poor, destitute woman. What do I have going on for me? I'm old. There's nothing that I can possibly do for you. You know what waits for you in Eretz Yisrael? You're going to have humiliation. You have to go into conversion. You have to change this. And you have to change that. It's very, very difficult. And then she says above that, what's waiting for you there, besides the fact that being so hard and a difficult life, it's going to hurt me the most, she tells her daughters. She says, because I'm going to see you suffering so much only because of me. She says, rather, what will make me even happier, go home, find yourself some nice, Moabite prince, get married, settle down, have some kids. What you're going to come over there, it's not going to be. And this is what really she should have done, because when, if somebody's coming in, this is a general rule. If a convert wants to convert, we push them away. We push them away 3 times until they have to keep on forcing them. So she kept on pushing them away. And like the way that she should have. So Naomi goes on and she says furthermore, she says, listen, you're gonna come over to me. She says, what are you gonna do? You're gonna want, there was a rule, like you could do yibum. Yibum is if, let's say you have a brother, and this brother goes and marries a girl, and the brother dies before they have any children. There's a halakha of yibum that the single brother goes, or even married back then, goes and marries the sister-in-law, because they didn't have any children, and they have, through that conception, the brother's memory continues. So she says, listen, I have no more children, and I'm old. She says, what, do you think I'm going to go back and get married? And she says, let's say I go and I get married. Let's say I'm able to find somebody. Then who says if I get pregnant? And let's say I get pregnant, who says it's going to be a boy or girl? Let's say that at a 50% chance it's going to be a boy. Then you're going to wait another 13 years or whatever it is until he gets older. And after all that, he could say, I don't want to marry you. I want to find, you're going to be older by then. She says, after all that, you're going to go for what? For what? So she was basically convincing them, there's nothing for you in Israel. There's nothing for you in Eretz Yisrael. So Orpah decided, and she's like, and they each started, tears coming down their face. Orpah and Ruth, though, each had a little bit of a different reason why they were emotionally hurt and why they were crying. Orpah, she had an emotional attachment to Naomi, to her mother-in-law, and she would miss that. She was, very fond of each other, and she missed that. Ruth besides that, she had an additional reason, is that she was actually drawn to Judaism. She was drawn to Eretz Yisrael. She was drawn to the Torah. She was drawn to Hashem, and she wanted that. And she was like, "What? Why she's pushing us away?" It's like, I really want this. I really want to get married. I really want to convert. So, and you can look how 2 girls raised in the same home acted completely differently. Orpah gets the hint, and she says, "You know what? I understand you." She says, she was thinking about it logically. Her perspectives in Israel is tiny, if anything, that's on a ray of sunshine, even if you can go over there. It wasn't good. Back in Moab, she's a princess. She's be able to continue living up. So she goes to Naomi. She gives her a kiss, and she says, I'm out of here. I got the hint. I'm going back. And she went and she started walking back. Ruth was, before we get to Ruth, let me tell you a little bit what happened to Orpah. Orpah, when she left Naomi, she went on a really, really downward spiral. And in fact, the Gemara in Sotah, page 42, says that day that she left Naomi, she went to a very, very promiscuous path. And she was with, 100 men and even one dog. And from that union and that night actually came Goliath. Goliath was later known as a giant, that he went and he fought, David HaMelech, which was, from Ruth comes David, from Orpah comes Goliath, and they both fought each other. So Orpah left, she went on a downward spiral, and she went back to Moab, back to her previous life. Now Ruth's turn. So Naomi goes over to Ruth and says, listen, what do you got over here? Go follow your sister. Go catch up to her, and you'll still have something back over there. And, she was crying. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. Orpah, she had 4 tears that went down. Because of those 4 tears, she was given 4 descendants who were very powerful. And Goliath was one of those descendants. So Ruth, instead of going and following her sister, she started crying, and she went and she hugged Naomi. She grabbed her and she wouldn't let her go. And so Naomi says, listen, I appreciate everything that you've done. Really, you guys were amazing. You guys were great. I have nothing but good things to say about you. But go back home. Go back home to your sister, to your family. And Ruth was like, her soul was so pure. She's like, why are you doing this to me? She's like, your words are so painful to me. And she says, I'm not coming for you. I'm coming also for the Torah. Please, please don't stop pushing me away. And she's literally pleading with her that, and she goes, Ruth tells her, so listen, I know that you have to push a convert away. Says, but don't you see I'm sincere? You went way above what you were supposed to do. Says, can't you see that I just want this so badly? Says, and she goes and Ruth tells her like this, and says, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you sleep, I will sleep. I will never leave your side day and night. This is what she tells Naomi. And then she goes on, she says, you speak about your God, your people. She says, it's not only your God and your people, it's my God and my people now. And she goes on, she says, the Moabites, no longer my people. And she goes and she says, Ruth continues and she says, and if you reject me and you push me away, it says, it's not going to stop me. I'm still going to Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to still. Says, let me just come with you together. So I love you so much. You're my mother-in-law. Says, why make me go separate? Let me come together with you. So she goes and Naomi tells her, and she says, listen, she says, what's waiting for you over there? She says, I appreciate your sincerity, but you have to be really serious about this. You know what's waiting for you there? Not good stuff. And she says, and then she goes and says, what happens if Naomi says, if I go into land of Eretz Yisrael, shortly afterwards, she passes away. What are you going to do? She says, you're not going to have me. So Ruth answers, says, I want to be with you together in this world and together in the next world. And she kept on pushing. No matter what Naomi threw at her, she kept on fighting. So she goes and Naomi sees that, she's really sincere. She says, converting to Judaism is a serious thing. She says, halachot of Shabbat. And she started explaining her about Tchum Shabbat. You can't walk 2,000 amot. And she says, that's fine. She ran to reply back, wherever you go, I go. I'll follow you wherever you go. And then she says, modesty. Modesty for a woman is very, very important. She says, you're going to have to do, it's not easy at times. And she says, what easy, hard, no matter what it is, all 613 mitzvot, I accept upon myself. And she goes, and Naomi tries even more. And she goes and she tells her like this, and she says, many people want to join the Jewish nation because there's a lot of perks. God's children, you get a lot of perks from God. It's becoming a favorite. This is the way to become a favorite of God. So it says, what happens if you think you're coming in here? You're going to get a lot of special treatment in this world. What happens if it doesn't happen? All your reward is only for the next world. And by the way, this is unfortunately how some Baal Tshuva also go and get into Judaism, become more religious. They'll be like, listen, they have a hard time. They don't have a parnassa. They don't have a wife. They're not happy with their marriage. They're not happy with life. They're like, all right, listen, I tried everything else. Let's try God. Only thinking the only reason why they're becoming religious, the only reason why they're keeping Shabbat, the only reason why they're stopping to waste seed is only because they think of the blessing, they think of the parnassah, they think of the good thing that happens. It says not always do you see that. Hopefully you should see that. But what happens if it's going to be to the next world? Are you willing to do that? Are you that invested that if you're only good that you're going to come is going to see in the next world, are you willing to go in there? And Ruth replied, yes. She says, says, this world, what do you live? You live a little bit over here. How long already you live here? But the next world is forever. She says, I accept everything. And so Naomi sees that Ruth is really serious in it. She says, fine. One of the rules is that once you see a convert is very serious about converting, you can already stop, pushing them away. So she goes on, she says, listen, being a Jew, you have to be a Jew inside and outside. Like the Germans, when the Reform movement came about, how did the Germans, they sell that? They said, listen, outside, you're German. Inside, in your house, you're Jewish. Later, what we see how it really happened is that there were German inside and outside. They ended up, not really being any, much Judaism. So she goes to Ruth and says, "Listen, your inside and outside has to be the same. Being Jewish, being religious, is not just a facade. It's not just pretending to be like that. It's not just coming to synagogue 3 times a day, having a kippah, or wearing a skirt, whatever it is that you're doing, and wearing your tzitzit, and going through the motions. It means that what really is dwelling inside of you." And to what she replied is where you sleep, I will sleep, which means it's just like sleeping is something internally. It's something inside. You do inside. She says inside, outside, doesn't matter. I'm going to be exactly like you. And she went and she, and no matter what she threw at her, she went. So Naomi realized, she says fine. She gave up on trying to convince her out, and they started walking. Now, something very interesting. The pasuk says, when they were walking, it says that the pasuk in Ruth, it says "V'tireh ki misametzes hi lalechet ita." The word misametzes means that it was very struggling to keep up, which means she saw that Ruth was struggling to keep up. There's 2 interpretations of this. The Vilna Gaon explains like this. He explains very fascinating. There's an evil inclination and there's a good inclination. Now, sometimes the evil inclination is so good that he's going to make you think you're doing a mitzvah, but really it's an evil inclination. Really, it's a sin. And you can see that there are many people. Easiest example like this: there are 2 people that are dating. But what happens when they're dating? They don't keep the full. You're not supposed to touch. You're not supposed to do that. And they're doing sins, but they're saying, "Listen, I have to do this because this is the way that's keeping us close, and we're going to go into marriage, and we're going to go this, and she's making me keep Shabbat, and he's making me beat tzniut." So they make all their sins, they convince it that it's turning into it's a mitzvah. So the evil inclination is very good in making that. Now, how do you know, says the Vilna Gaon, if you're doing something a mitzvah, but if it's coming from the evil inclination or the good inclination? Says the Vilna Gaon, it depends on your physical body. The body itself tries to, it's very hard for it to do mitzvot. You want to wake up for shachrit in the morning, it's hard. You're sitting in a class on a Tuesday night, it's late, really, you want to go to sleep, you want to eat dinner, whatever it is that you have to, it's hard to stay over here. So if it's hard and it's a struggle, then you know it's real. Then it comes from the evil inclination, because otherwise the Yetzer Hara will make it easy for you. Be like, come on, it's good, don't worry about it. So that's how you know. So Naomi, when she saw that Ruth was struggling, she kept on coming, she realized that this is not coming from a superficial area, that she just wants to be close to Naomi, she just wants the goodness. She realized that it's coming from a true essence of it, that she's keep on pushing it. And that's why she decided also that she's going to not push her away. The other interpretation of it, which is really in the similar lines, is that what misametzes means that she was struggling. Not that Ruth was struggling, but rather Naomi was struggling to keep up with Ruth. Ruth was like, there's some people, when they become religious or they become a convert, they are on fire. These people are like plowing through you have somebody who's becoming a Baal Tshuva for about 11 years. He gained about 6% in the past 11 years. Then you have somebody else who's a Baal Tshuva for like 6 months, and he went like 7,000%. And he learned more in 6 months when the other guy learned in 11 years. There are certain people with a fire. Ruth had such a fire, she was shooting straight forward. And Naomi was like, hold up, I got to catch up for you. And in essence, we could really say that they're really not opposite, but really the same things. Because there's a little bit of a chidush over here. Because what happens is when you have a struggle and when it's hard for you, and you push forward, you gain so much more. And Ruth, even though she was struggling in the beginning, but she kept on pushing forward, that instead of her struggling, now Naomi was struggling, because she used that force to go into the good. So they go and they travel. They travel a tremendous distance in a very short period of time. They traveled the distance from Moab to Bethlehem, which is a period roughly about 42 miles. They did it in one day, and without shoes also. At least Naomi. Now, traveling back then is very dangerous. You can't just jump on the nearest train, the airplane, the coach bus, and take it to the next town. It was walking, and you're walking 2 men walking at it by yourself. In those times, it's just it's spelling disaster. Like all the men that are out on the roads at that point in time are not Mr. Tzaddikim that are be like, live first. They are actually interested in other things. So they decided what they're going to do is, because of the danger, is they're going to go and pretend to be men. They're going to walk as men walk, pretend hide their hair, whatever it was. They were going to go pretend to be men. So this way, at least people won't catch too much attention. So miraculously, everything was by divine providence, they happened to see two men's beggars' clothes lying down in the thing. So they go, they put it up, and they go and they start walking towards town. And Baruch Hashem, they weren't. It was uneventful, which was good. Nobody touched them. As opposed to one of the reasons that Orpah decided that she's not going to go to Israel, she says, listen, I'm going to go travel another 40 miles in this dangerous part. It's very dangerous. And she decided that she's going to go and take the safe route, go back to Moab. There's an interpretation that says that, Orpah, not that she went and she did all this promiscuity willingly, but rather she went back and she got caught up with people that sort of raped her, and they took her by force. And so you look at how it is. When you're doing a mitzvah, you don't get hurt. When you think, okay, I'm going to save myself, I'm doing a mitzvah, I'm going to go back, you see that they were saved. Ruth and Naomi were saved, but yet Orpah, when she went back, she was unfortunately not saved. So they get over there. They finally reach Eretz Yisrael. They reach Bethlehem. And they see something that's very, very odd. The entire place is jam-packed with people. It's like full to the brim with and they're wondering like, what's going on over here? Why is everybody over here? And when they come closer, they realize that it's that Boaz, which was now we have to explain who Boaz is. The next big character in the scene is Boaz. So Boaz was also a very wealthy person, a leader, a very righteous person. We're going to speak a little bit about him. He was the cousin of Naomi, or really the aunt of let me explain it this way. So Nachshon had 4 kids. One of them was Salmon. Salmon's kid was Boaz. So Elimelech and Boaz, they were like nephew and uncle. They were nephew and uncle. But to Naomi, they were cousins, because Naomi was this way. You follow me? So this was a close family from the tribe of Yehudah, and his wife just passed away. So being that he was a leader both in the spiritual sense and the physical sense, he was also very wealthy. So the entire nation came to the funeral of, and which shows you how the Chafetz Chaim explains this, how everything is measure for measure. Because when Naomi left Eretz Yisrael, she left, everybody saw that, and it caused a lot of harm to everybody else. When she came back, which was a very embarrassing part for her, to come back as a destitute, poor widow, when she left as a rich, distinguished, mother and wife, it was very, very shameful. So just like everybody saw her when she left, so too everybody saw her when she came back, and the same measure for measure. So and this is how you see how God works in a certain, because the only reason why Elimelech and Naomi they left Israel is because they didn't want to lose their wealth, and they wanted to preserve it, and they didn't want to suffer from the hunger. And what happens? You see, the only people, says the Midrashim, the only people that died during this hunger was only Naomi's husband, Elimelech, and the 2 sons of Machlon and Kilion. So this is when you have people that are collecting money, and let's say Baruch Hashem, you have money, and you're giving money to somebody else, a poor person. Who is supporting who? You think, I have the money, I'm giving the poor guy, I'm supporting him. You don't know who's supporting who. Really, it could be the poor guy supporting you. And his merit that you're constantly giving him tzedakah is the only reason why you have a bracha with parnasah, or the only reason why you have success in life. So they were leaving Eretz Yisrael thinking that they're going to save. They're like, well, you think you're going to save your money? You think you can run? God showed them that not only do you lose all your money, you lost all, you actually died of hunger as well. So they, at this point in time, they come into town, they see the whole funeral dressing, and they walk in sort of like dressed as 2 men. There are women inside. And again, you know how like you think it can fool people. And there are 2 people standing over there and be like, that's, are those guys, what, are they men? Are they women? It's very odd what's going on up here. And just as they see that, they see, Ruth and Naomi, they slip into a building. Shortly after that, they come out, two women all of a sudden. Like 2 men come in, 2 women come out. They're like, something fishy. And then they start looking more, and they'll be like, wait a minute. It's like, is that Naomi? They couldn't recognize her, because they recognize her as, a prestigious woman, like everything with prestige. And all of a sudden she's coming as a poor, destitute woman. They're talking back and forth to each other. Is that actually, Naomi? Meanwhile, you usually have, who are the ones that are able to say things? Old people. They don't, there's no like, excuse me, are you by name? Be like, hey, you look familiar. Are you Naomi? So she goes over to Naomi, and Naomi says, please don't call me Naomi anymore. Naomi comes to the word Naim, nice, and she says, I was pleasant. Naim is like pleasant. She says, I was Naomi, but now you have to call me Mara, because I'm bitterness. I come from, what I went through is I'm no more pleasantness. I'm just bitterness. But yes, I am Naomi. And so they started asking her, how is that possible? She said, you left, like with prestige, with honor, with wealth. How did everything happen? You know what she replied? She replied back, it's because of our sins. It says, because of our sins, she was able to see the reason. She says, it's because of our sins that we went, and my husband died, and our 2 children died, and everybody died because of our sins. And they went, and this is when they entered the land. It says one of the first things that Ruth did when she entered the land was go to convert. So there's machlokes. She actually converted the day that she went in, or she just started the process and converted 3 months later. But regardless, the process was already beginning the day that she went in, right away. So Naomi was explaining to Ruth who was her family relative, family. So she says, listen, this person, Boaz, he's actually also known as Ivtzan. Ivtzan is like Avlitzon, a father to the flock. Like sort of like a shepherd takes care of the flock. That's how he took care of the Jewish nation. He was a great leader, and he was, a very righteous person. Gave him praise. Tells, she says, you're describing like a perfect man, like this guy's, and she says, and Naomi says, yeah, he really is. Says, but I have to tell you something. I have to tell you something that you're going to hear. She's like, oh, there's more. Is it tzaddik, a big wealthy guy, giving a lot of zakat, big tamid chacham, big judge, big everything. He's like, what more can it be? And she's like, this is actually a little bit on the other side, that, you're probably going to hear rumors, going around in the streets. So I want it to come out from me, so and that not, it doesn't come out from them. So she says, what happened? So she says that, Boaz had a lot of kids. And in fact, he had 30 boys and 30 girls, 60 kids he had. And all 60 of the kids died. Every single one of them. So she's like, what happened? It's like, what's going on? That's obviously, a sign. Like, what was going on? So Naomi explains, says there was a person by the name of Manoach. Manoach was very close, actually, to Boaz. And Manoach didn't have any kids. And Boaz never invited him to one he made 60 weddings. And in fact, I think the Midrashim say that each wedding was 2 feasts. He made 2 parties for it. And so 120 parties that he made, he didn't invite once Manoach, this one guy. And Ruth replied back, she's like, what, such a righteous guy, why wouldn't he invite his good friend? Why wouldn't he invite him back? So Naomi said, there are reasons that he thought that one of the reasons was that the Midrashim brings down is that if he doesn't invite him, then Manoach is going to feel bad, and if he feels bad, he's going to start praying harder. And maybe if this is going to make him pray harder, maybe this God will grant him to have children, because he didn't have any children now. So Boaz was trying, even though he was close to Manoach, but he didn't want to invite him to try to put him in a little bit of a difficult situation. So because of that, he's going to start praying, and because of that, he's going to have a child. The Maharsha explains it differently. Maharsha explains, and it says that the reason why is that when you go into to these parties, you give a gift. Right? Generally, I know there's like Gorski and Bukhari, and not only do you have to give a gift, you have to buy your seat. You have to come over here, you have to pay for your seat. So he says, listen, he's going to come, he's going to give me 120 gifts. I'm never going to be able to repay him back because he doesn't have any children. Says, I don't want to have to accept the gift and not be able to pay him back, and he's going to have to give a gift. He says, rather, don't feel obligated coming. I didn't want to come. Regardless of what the good intentions that Boaz may have had, Hashem did punish him. It says, regardless, you don't insult, you don't hurt somebody else's feelings. Leave that for Hashem. And Hashem punished him, and 60 of his children went and they passed away. So the Ruth also goes over to Naomi and she says, listen, you have this uncle, and he is so amazing. No, not an uncle. It's a cousin, right? Like a cousin. This is your cousin. So he says, you're so close, and he's wealthy. And he says, why don't we, because they were poor, they didn't have any food, they didn't have anything. Let's, why is it, forget about why don't we come to him? Why doesn't he come to us? He says, you're a relative. So Naomi explained to her, says, listen, first of all, he just lost his wife. He's in through the Shiva period, and besides that, it's harvest season. Harvest season is one of the busiest, the busiest times in the, for the farmers over there. So he says, ordinarily, I'm sure that he would have came over. And she replied back to them, and one of the reasons why I am not going to him, to be honest with you, is I'm embarrassed. She says, when we went to Moab, he kept on sending us letters. Come back. He gave us Musa. He says, come back. You're not supposed to be there. We ignored it. 10 years he sent us letters. We ignored it. All of a sudden, when we need him, we come back and we're going to... She says, she was embarrassed to do that. She says, it's hard for me to do that. Ruth says, I completely understand. If it's okay, can we go a few more minutes? If anyone needs to leave, feel free to go. I just want to finish at least a certain part of it. So, they go and they decide that they figure out a place where they're going to stay, and now they have to figure out how are they going to survive. It's they don't have any money, they're poor. How do they survive? So Ruth goes and says, "Listen, I'll go collecting charity. I'll be, and she's, Naomi says, Chas v'shalom, says, you're a princess. You're going to go collecting for charity? He says, it's not apropos. So she says, rather, she goes and she says, this is my idea. My idea is as follows, says Ruth. She goes and she says like this. She says, there is, the halacha in Eretz Yisrael is like this, that there is something called leket, shchicha, and peah. You learned interesting 3 halachot. That back then, instead of having people collect money, which is very downgrading, what they did was they made certain halachot that you didn't have to sort of insult yourself and going and asking for things, that you were able to pick certain things up in the field. Now, one of them was leket. So leket literally is if, let's say, they're gathering stalk, and if, let's say, they drop, as they're gathering stalk, they drop the stalks, the halacha is if it's less than 3, you don't pick it up. You're not allowed to pick it up. You save it for the poor people. So the poor people, after you do your sweep and you get everything as the owner of the land, the poor people go around and they look for the leket. They look for the leket, they're able to take that. That's for them. That's like tzedakah. And then there's shikha, which is bundles that if you forgot. Let's say you gathered a bunch of bundles, but you forgot some of them. Once you forgot them, you leave them there, the poor people will go take it. And last is peah, which is a corner of the field which you don't harvest at all. You leave it, and that's also for the poor people. And in fact, the Medrash tells us like this, so amazing. It's because of the merit of this mitzvah of giving for the poor people, this is the reason why Klal Yisrael will never be destroyed. This is what's so special about this, is that this is such a high level of tzedakah that usually, the person doesn't get insulted. And furthermore, usually when you give charity, you feel good. You go and you give a certain amount of money to the poor person. The poor person starts blessing you. Thank you so much. You saved me. You feel a little good. Over here, you don't know who's collecting your field. You could like him. You could not like him. It doesn't matter. The poor person takes it without feeling so bad. The rich guy doesn't get that honor in it. So it's really a high level of tzedakah. And this is one of the reasons why it's held so importantly in the Jewish thought. The Boaz, to make how righteous he was, is that he made people drop more. He told his people, says, leave extra for the poor people. If they need it, you have to remember, this is the first harvest after 10 years of famine. People are starving. Can you imagine the amount of flock of poor people that are coming to the land? He says, don't worry about it. Leave a little more for them. So she goes, and Naomi says, we'll go to collect, sort of like we'll go together. So Ruth goes there, he's like, Chas v'shalom, you're going to go. You're a prestigious woman from this town. You're not going about that. Naomi says, what do you think? Who's going to go then? So Ruth says, I'll go. Says, a princess going to go collect? Absolutely not. So Ruth says, what are you, a princess? I'm a humble convert. I'm a nobody. She was very humble. She says, no, let me go and collect. So Naomi, by Bishum often, she was not interested. She's like, you're not going to collect. So, Ruth tells her, says, listen, he says, I made a vow. I promised you. He says, wherever you go, I go. I'll always be by your side. I'm not going to go if you don't want me to go. But it makes sense that I should go. And she started talking her into it. And Naomi later realized, it's true. That's the only hope of survival is if she goes. So she goes and she says, fine, I'm going to give, I'll give in. And she says, go my daughter. She used the words my daughter. And one of the reasons that specifically she used my daughter is that Naomi was telling Ruth, until now you come from Moab. You have the character traits of Moab, the stinginess of Moab, the immodesty of Moab. But now I call you my daughter because I could see all the traces, all the impurities of Moab. I left you. Now I could truly call you my daughter. You're really truly part of the Jewish nation. And it says that the way that she tried to, so Ruth was going the next morning, she went out to go to the fields to harvest. So she had to travel to the fields. They lived in a certain area and the fields were in a certain area. So in order to travel, obviously you can't travel by yourself, so she had to go and tag along with other fellow travelers. And she goes and she heads out and she sees the group that was walking out now to the field weren't so modest. How some people when they start something new, they do it right. They know that she's like, listen, I'm honest, I'm not doing it. Remember, she's starving. They don't have any food. She goes back home and she waits. She waits to the next group. The next comes, she's a little bit, more modest. She goes and she tags along with them. And because of the way that she did that, the first group went into a different area. Now that she tagged along the second group, she actually went into the area where Boaz's field went. They went to 2 separate areas. So because of everything that you'll soon see what would happen, that will come into play because she went to Boaz's field, was only what? Because she didn't decide that she's going to be more modest and she didn't want to go with them. Who knows where she would have ended up. So she goes and she enters, she gets to the fields, and she was very, very, very particular. And in fact, the way that she collected was, besides being smart about collecting, so she went to collect all the forgotten straw and everything that was on the ground that she was able to collect, is she was very meticulous. First of all, she would only go into a place where, sometimes people give tzedakah, but you could tell by their face, they don't want to give it. They're like sweating, as they're writing the check, their hands a little shaky. They give the check, they look at it, it's like $18, and this guy's driving a $5,000 car, at least, a month. And but they still, it's hard for them to give. So she didn't want to take that from that type of person. She wanted to go and give somebody who was very. So she went until she found the place from Boaz where she sees. And not only that, she went and she asked them. She's like, "Is it okay if I could do that?" And they were like looking at her and be like, "Yeah, you don't have to ask. We just go." But that's how particular she was. But then she did something very interesting. Usually, what you do is, imagine you're picking up free money off the floor. What do? You pick up everything that you see. And that's what I was doing. I was grabbing. She didn't do that way. She went first to the far end of the field, and then she worked her way back. And she picked up as she went along. And the Midrashim says this is amazing, because she was the only one who did that. And the question is why? It makes no sense. Like why is that? I mean, just opposite. It makes perfect sense, because she has to walk all the way back. Why go and collect this way and then bring all this heavy stuff back? She's perfectly logical what she's doing. Why is it considered like a big chidush what she did, that she went backwards? And the answer is because what was so difficult is if you have to collect now a bunch of dollars on the floor, you'll be like, okay, I have to collect. It's very heavy, these dollars. Imagine the dollars heavy. You're going to go over there and like, no. The second that you see something, you grab it. Everybody, the way they did it, they saw something and on the floor they grabbed it. They grabbed it. So they didn't think about going the other way around. Ruth said, listen, I have complete faith in God. I'm going to get what I'm supposed to get. Be smart. She went in the back and she started working her way back. So she went and she was and she started carrying from that way. Now at this point, Boaz finished the mourning period, and about 10 minutes, Hashem will be done. She's finishing the mourning period, and Boaz is finishing the mourning period, and for some reason he decides that he's going to go visit, the fields, which is it's out of the ordinary, but he decides he's going to go visit the field. But before he did that, he was the judge, and he had to, there was some line of business that he had to do, and one of the questions that came up is a Moabite girl. Is she allowed to when she converts? Are you allowed to marry her? Or are you not allowed to marry her? This is nothing to do with Ruth. He didn't even know that Ruth was there yet. This is before, and they made a ruling before even he knew about Ruth that the ruling is, which is the true ruling. It's a woman you're allowed to marry, but a man you're not allowed to marry for the reason that we gave earlier. So he goes and he decides that he is going to now go and check the harvest, and something very interesting. You learn from a business owner. What happens when a guy who runs a business walks into the business? All right, guys, what's the sales? Are we up? Are we down? Tell me what you're doing. Give me numbers. Straight to talk, straight to money. Boaz, what he comes in the second he walks into the field. You know what he tells him? How he greeted them? Hashem imachem. God is with you. Imagine you walk into a guy, and I'm not talking some hippie guy, walks without shoes into the office and be like, this ponytail because he just made a trip to India. He spoke to the Dalai Lama for 2 days, smoked a little hashish over there, and he became all of a sudden spiritual. I'm talking about somebody who completely connected to the spiritual world, completely connected. He walks in, you're working for a tzaddik. By the way, nothing better. You want to work for somebody? Work for somebody who's a righteous man. Your life couldn't be easier. He goes and obviously shouldn't take advantage, but there's perks to that. He goes and he tells him, God is with you. And in fact, this is a formal greeting that later took into play. If you realize, now we don't say it like that because we say it a little bit different. We say Shalom Aleichem. Hashem Imachem is like God is with you. Use God's name. We say Shalom Aleichem. Shalom is also one of God's name. This is where it started from. This is where it started that type of greeting. And they replied back to him, Yivarech Hashem. God will bless you. Which means let us understand what is actually going on over here. What happened was he went into the field. And the Bach explains it like this, and he realized that there's something different about here. There's something righteous. I can feel it. I can feel that God is over here. I can feel that Hashem Imachem. I can feel that something spiritual going on over here. So he tells the people, Hashem Imachem, I see that there's something spiritual going on in this thing. Tell me what's different today. And they reply back to him, Yivarech Hashem. He says, to be honest, it's because of you. He says, you're the righteous one, and that's why God is with us today. And then Boaz says, no, there's something different about it today. And that Ruth was in the field over there. So he was trying to figure out what's so special about over here, what's so different about this field than every other day that I've been here before. There's something spiritual going on over here. And then he realized he saw something that he hasn't seen before, and that's Ruth's modesty. Her modesty, he saw, was the way that she was so careful. If it was, there's some people that were poor people, they're like, all right, once you're collecting, collect a little bit over here. Maybe you're not supposed to take from that area, but don't worry about it. It's collected, it's fine. Everything's okay. Ruth, you saw how particular she was. She made sure everything was exactly what was halachically permitted, and that's when she picked up. Even more so was her modesty. You bend down, the girl, can bend down, and so her skirt may rise, and sleeves go down. She bent down and she curtsied. Which is more difficult, more annoying, and more cumbersome. Definitely not more effective and efficient. And she saw, she was so modest that she wouldn't try to, give up anything of the modesty, even if it means to collecting food. So he says there's something different about that person. And even more, some people, because of the girls, right? So they have to have, cover the elbows, cover the knees. It gets a little bit hot. Sometimes it slips a little bit up. The people were collecting their harvest season. It was getting close to the nice weather. Things were riding up a little bit, but her completely covered, completely modesty. So Boaz goes over and says, who is this girl? What's her deal? So there was, he got sort of a split opinion about her. But it's very interesting because you think about it. Somebody's in the shidduch, she comes in, she's a convert. She's in marriageable age. Granted, she was at 40 years old at this point. So she's 40 years old. And, if she wants to get married, she's got to, make a move on it. What do you have to do? You have to make yourself marketable. So you would think, okay, listen, I have to make myself marketable. Okay, it's niyut. All right, we got to worry about that afterwards. I got to, So if you think logically, she would try to make herself more, put herself out there to get herself a potential, husband. But what Shlomo HaMelech says in Kohelet, chapter 8, verse 5, he says, Shomer mitzvah lo yeda davara. If somebody is doing a mitzvah, he'll never know something bad that will happen. If you came today just for this, it was worth it. When you're doing something good, no. At the end of the day, you're not going to lose out of it. You might lose out of it temporarily. You might see that but at the end of the day, you will never lose out of something good that happens. Right? For example, we're going overtime today. Making me feel a little bit bad. So by us going overtime today, no matter what's going on over there, business deal, something going on there, you will never lose out of it. Not that I could say, because you're coming to Shiur Torah, my Shiur Torah, that's why. No, nothing to do with that. Because you're learning Torah, nothing bad is going to come after that. Maybe for a small temporary, you'll see maybe a loss here or there, but in the long run, know that you'll never come back. Ruth knew this, and she says, I'm not compromising anything. Modesty is modesty no matter what. So she goes and she decides she's going to take on modesty full force. Now, Boaz is starting to investigate and see what's going on with this. Who is this modest girl? Who is this person I've never seen before? So they go and they start telling us, this person is she's Ruth. He's like, Ruth, who's Ruth? He says, she's from Moab. It's like, from Moab? What you doing over here? And he started explaining, she came with Naomi, and they started explaining to her and be like, people talk and people know. She's like, listen, we heard what she did to Naomi. The chesed, because she really did a lot of chesed for Naomi. She refuses to let Naomi go out. She does everything for her. She's stuck by her. No matter if they lost the money, they didn't. She's stuck by her by high and low, and she is, unbelievable kindness that she did to Naomi, and they had nothing but good things to say about Ruth. And you can see, look at her modesty. Look at the way we've never seen this before. She asks us everything. If we could pick this up, we could pick it up, and be like, yeah, of course you can pick it up. Just go. No one ever does it. Everyone just comes and picks it up. So that's what he got from one people. Then he got a conflicting report from somebody else. Somebody else says, oh, this girl, immodest girl. Can you believe it? Look at her coming in. Look how much she's collecting. She was a very tough worker, showing off to everybody that she could do it, making believe. From Moab, come on, this Moab, and so because she married a Jew, and you know what happened to that? He died. He was just like a death trap walking around over here, and got very conflicting things. So Boaz walked over to Ruth, and he realized that this person was slandering her. She was able to overhear it. So Boaz goes over to Ruth and be like, you should, don't worry about it. I don't believe what he says. You should know that there's slanderers, there are people that speak lashon hara in this nation just like there's any other nation. But he goes and he hears that she's converting, and he hears all about her, and he tells her a few sentences in which I'm going to explain to you in the allegorical terms as well. He tells her, stay in the Jewish nation, which means don't return to the pagan world that you came from. You're here, you stay where you are. Show that you trust in Hashem. Then he goes and he says, don't pass over this field. He was telling her, I want you to stay in this field. He says, you should be comfortable over here. You could collect as much as you want over here. Keep on coming back to this field particularly. But the allegorical term for that is that he says, don't disregard Hashem's commandments. Stay within the field of Hashem's commandments. Stay within the field of Torah. And then he goes over there and says, stick with the maidens, the women workers over here. Which means follow the Torah, follow the Sanhedrin, follow the Tamid HaChachamim for the Torah. And he says, do not think of yourself as an outsider. You're part of the Jewish nation. And Ruth replies, I will stay over here. And then, Ruth, Boaz tells her, and he says, he tells her like this. He says in the Megillah, it says, "V'tehi maskartech shlema." May your payment be full, which is like, what your reward. Boaz is hinting to your reward be full. What does that mean? May your reward be full. So, first of all, Ruth, and we'll soon see, she actually goes and she says, why are you giving me so much attention? Like, what did I do to deserve this? And, Boaz replied back to her and he says, because I heard of all the chesed you did to Naomi, your mother-in-law. And she says, I didn't do that for reward. I did that because it was the right thing to do. And he says, that's exactly why I'm telling you that's why you're rewarded, because that's the ultimate way of doing things. So she goes and she says, and he tells her, may your reward be complete. Now, what does that mean, may your reward be complete? So, this is a beautiful interpretation that I heard. There are many people that, why they're religious? They were born religious and they stuck to religion, and that's why they continued in that path. So, when you're climbing higher, you're born in the religious world and you're coming higher, so you get reward because of what you did. But let's say somebody is a convert. He comes from a completely non-Jewish background. So he's not basing off everything else from under it. He's doing everything himself, or she's doing everything herself. So she's going from 0 to 100 by herself, as opposed to somebody who went from, let's say, 5% to 100. So your reward, he tells Ruth, is going to be full, because you did everything by yourself. No influence on your parents, no influence on previous background. You're doing it 100% yourself. This, by the way, goes also for people who do about Shuvah. They're coming in from themselves, and in coming from themselves, the reward is obviously much greater. So, additionally, he explained to her like this. I think Pinchas Pinchas Horowitz. I'm sorry. He explained like this. He says that everybody puts a value on mitzvot, and I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an option. You could go to a business meeting, or you have to pray with the minyan, and you're like, listen, I can't miss this out. So you skip the minyan and you go to the business meeting. So what you're really showing God is that this minyan is worth X amount of money of how much money I was going to, which means this business meeting is worth more than the minyan that I was going to do. So you put sort of a value on your mitzvot, which is obviously you get rewarded accordingly. So Ruth had shown so much devotion and commitment to Torah. Like only death do us part, literally in the literal sense between her and the Torah. She showed such a commitment to them that says you're going to get the full reward, because you're not going to compromise. You're not going to show that there's going to be a price tag to a mitzvah that you're doing. So he goes and Boaz invites her to come in to stay with him. And in fact, it's mentioned even in the Midrashim that he sort of hinted to her a possible potential marriage in the future with him. Possible. If it's something that she's interested in, which she was, obviously, very interested. And Ruth tells Boaz, and he says, you really comforted me, which is really a feat in itself. To comfort somebody is not so easy as you think. Asks anybody who has been through Shiva, somebody who unfortunately lost a parent, a spouse, or anything. People come in and they say the stupidest things. And my wife told me that also. When I go to Shiva, years ago, she already warned me. Because I'm a guy, I just speak. And I could, my wife makes fun of me. I could speak to a tree. I just find people, it's not a problem. I've said this story before. I don't know if I said it over here. There was some woman who was collecting money and she needed, a ride. So, by all means, I'll take her where you need to go. And we had to travel, quite, maybe a 10-minute drive. I think she spoke, to be honest, I don't even know what language she spoke. Russian, Persian, something like that. Zero English. I spoke zero of her language. Nothing. No. We talked the entire time. The entire ride, 10 minutes we were talking. What? I'm not 100% sure. I know something about our kids. We said Baruch Hashem a lot. We did we went back and forth, but we were talking. So people with my, dangerous type of, I guess you call it word vomit, or, this no filter that goes on over there, gets dangerous if you go to a Shiva house, because you could say stupid things, So how did he die? The car accident. Was he wearing a seatbelt? There's some things that you could say really dumb. And in fact, you ask people, unfortunately, that have been on the recipient end of these things, and they say people say really dumb things. People really say dumb things, and that's why when you go to pay a Shiva call, what you need to do is be quiet. Let the other person speak. Let the other person mourn. If you nudge it a little bit, okay, very little, but let the other person do the mourning. That you're not here to make yourself feel better. You're there to make the other person feel better. So it's very, very difficult to make somebody else feel better. So granted, when Boaz was able to make Ruth feel better, that's really an accomplishment. And Ruth says, you really made me feel better, and you really made me, which is a big thing in itself. So Boaz then goes and he tells her, I want you to. 2 minutes, we're done. Blineda. Okay, I know I've been pushing you guys for quite some time. I apologize. Boaz goes and he tells her, listen, I want you to break bread with me. He says, you don't have to go sit in the field and eat that. I want you to, you realize, your family, this, you're part of that. I want you to stick with me. So she goes and she says, fine. She agrees to that. But I'm not sitting on your table. I'm sitting on the side. In modesty. She was really, all for it. So, but the Gemara in Bava Metzia explains like this. The Gemara in Bava Metzia 87a tells us like this. It says that Chazal, what is a righteous person? He speaks a little but does a lot. Example, Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu tells the people in the desert, and he tells them, come, let me give you some bread and water. But what did he do? He made them a feast. He slaughtered them, calves, 3 calves, 1 calf. He made them a tremendous king feast. The way that the righteous people do things, say a little, do a lot. There are many people the other way around. Comes time for donations. Everyone's raising their hand. 4,000, 5,000. These people say a lot, do a little. They give you 10%. They give you a masel of what they thought they were going to give. Which you shouldn't be doing that. A righteous way to do it is say a little bit and do a lot. Boaz said, come break bread with me. But he really, he had a whole feast prepared for her. And he goes and Boaz goes and he gives her this, he sends her some roasted grain. And we're going to speak about it next time. What is in particular about this grain that he, it symbolizes. And it says that he, gave a small amount. And it says even that small amount satisfied Ruth. And one of the things that Chazal learn out of this is that a Jew can be satisfied with a little. A non-Jew only gets satisfied with a lot. And they bring a short story that say that one time there was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Dostai, that he testified about this. That he he was invited to a very, very wealthy, for political reasons, he had to go to this wealthy non-Jew's huge party. And this guy was a crazy party, like literally put everything out there. And there was nothing that was missing except a piece of nuts. So small, like salted nuts. When the party guy, the guy who arranged the party, realized that that's missing, he blew a fit, like a crazy rage fit. So the rabbi went over to him after and says, I understand you had everything in this party. He says, well, who cares about the nuts? So what this non-Jew told the rabbi? He says, listen, he says, you get the next world. That's your world. I understand that. This is my world. I need everything to have it in my world. And that's how a non-Jew goes. I need everything over here. A Jew is satisfied a little bit. They don't care what do you got to deal with in the world. Everything is going to be in the next world. Now, Ruth also realized the little thing that she had, that satisfied her. B'ezrat Hashem, we will continue next week. Any questions? I know it went a lot fast. Okay, Chazak u'Baruch.